So let's get started by really understanding the scope of opportunity that you find. How can MSMEs be an integral part of the story that we now paint over the next 25 years? There's so much attention currently on the techpreneurs, and we've already had a conversation on e-commerce and some of those other industries. But how does one address the core, the backbone of, of the national growth as well? Let me start off with you.
So, if we just go by what's happening worldwide, if you look at the worldwide statistics, anything between 49 to 51% of the entire world's GDP is actually contributed by the MSMEs, right? If you look at the developed countries, maybe, a little bit of US and other places, you will find the GDP contribution to be close to around anything between 65 to 73%. So the levels have been set that, how an MSME the percentage of the economy can
Sorry,
be.
could I just request the audience to settle down a little bit, please? It's really distracting if you're on stage. All right.
I mean, now if you look at India, and I'm talking to you of a period from, let's say, 2012 to today, the MSMEs were contributing anything between 15 and to 18% of the economy. Today we stand at 31%, and the whole idea is we'll get to 40%. So yes, the numbers tell you that it is slowly becoming the backbone, and the backbone is hardening, and it's doing it well.
All right. So continuing to strengthen that ecosystem, Riju, let me get your perspective as well. And, as a company or as a group, one that's also pivoted to keep in sync with the changing times, changing demands as well.
So, what Mr. Narayan was saying, that India today is around 25 to 30% of its GDP when it comes to the MSME. And we need to grow to that level of 60. And, for that, there are challenges to finance, challenges to HR, R&D, etc. And I think, large corporates, I was reading a statistic that it contributes MSMEs contribute 97% to the total employment of the country after agriculture, of course. So with such numbers, we really can't afford to ignore it. We need to, as responsible corporates also embrace it, have kind of systems wherein, we build channel partners wherein our suppliers are, you promote more of MSMEs. I don't know whether I'm going out of line when I say that, government could come out with certain guidelines that X percentage of your supply chain needs to be brought from, the local produce, like you say, MSMEs close to your thing. Because there's really so much of talent sitting over there. And like you said, if a country has to grow, developed countries like USA have 60% of their this thing coming from MSMEs. So we have a long way to go as far as that is concerned.
I don't think you're out of line at all. I think it's a really important question. Gurpreet, let me come to you on that, because do you feel perhaps they have been ignored? On one hand, everyone's growing, right? Along with India's growth story, everyone's seeing some growth. But do you feel that perhaps if there was a little bit more attention on how MSMEs could truly contribute, it would actually see a multifold effect?
I guess it's, as a country, I think these are hard choices. I think we've periods of time where the government came and supported, the ecosystem supported. I think what happened during the pandemic, the 2 years, what I think was exceptionally hard for the MSMEs, because they didn't have the tech backbone which the larger companies had. We saw across industries, market share shift was the larger companies. But I think what was very heartening to see the way the whole ecosystem came and supported. We had this whole, the RBI came and gave a moratorium, gave the scheme. The government actually put out what we call as ECLGS scheme, which I think was very, very successful in the sense what it could contribute. And I think we would need to see some more of this to kind of help them grow. As the other gentleman talked about, I think we have a long way to go. And what we've seen, if you have to grow as a country, and we have to do this 7% growth, we can't grow with a few set of corporates. It has to be a large, broad-based approach for us to grow. So I guess that's part of the chain.
Yes, Mr. Bhatia, I can see you smiling at all the comments. So, yeah.
No, I think I would absolutely agree with what has already been said. You see, if I see from the point of view of that, to retain India as the fastest growing economy, to achieve $5 trillion target, and to do something which is employment creation. Keeping these three things in mind, The answer is MSME. I think these are the MSMEs who would really take the economy to that level, provide more employment. But there are issues which needs to be really addressed to see that how they can, I mean, we just call them engine of growth or engine of the economy or whatever. I think it's important that we keep on nurturing them. I mean, MSME were the worst hit for in this COVID time. I mean, three things happened which really put them back. One is the demonetization, second is GST, and then third is the pandemic. I think these were the three things which really hurt them the most. Now, the government has to see that how how they can help with their policies, with providing more funds to them so that they come out of all that. I think these are the key things which I would say that are important for anyone to address.
Okay, I'll come to finance in a moment, but Mr. Narayan, how do you feel some of these MSMEs have been adapting post some of these extremely challenging and strenuous times?
The answer is, look at the local vegetable vendor. Yeah. He's, at the end of the day, some form of an MSME. I mean, the way he's adapted to getting his orders on the WhatsApp and doing all the digital payments, etc. And starting at the lowest rate. Sure. And as you go up, systems have evolved, modes of communications have come up, and they've all evolved pretty well. I mean, at the end of the day, you're talking about 63 million enterprises. And some of the latest numbers that are getting thrown out are that 6,000 enterprises finally shut down. So the numbers are not that bad as it looks. And the MSME is the typical way the MSME, they don't go through a structured formal training, etc. Right? They're the kind of people you just throw them on the deep end of the pool. Some of them sink, the rest of them start swimming, kind of stuff. And they've swum pretty well, according to me, in these days. And then, of course, all the some great work has been done on the infrastructure. Like if you look at it, while GST has been a bane in some cases, it's become a boon because businesses have become smoother, right? Today, when you look at a platform like Threads, for example, right? See, if Threads and GST work well in tandem, the concept of a lack of working capital in India as a concept should disappear, because it just says that every bill can be financed through the Threads platform. Banks are waiting with their wallets bulging. All these have to become available. We just need to create some more teeth around the right infrastructure that we have to put up. We have to make it mandatory that, GST bills get published on the Threads platform. Banks look at the Threads platform and start discounting it. And, whatever the little bit word that you used, finance, in between, those problems just disappear.
Just that little word, Okay, so let's talk about that. Access to finance, some of the SOPs perhaps that were announced post the worst of the pandemic, incentives for MSMEs. Are we seeing enough? Is there more on the wish list? Are there things that you'd like to see for particular sectors? Riju?
So I think one thing which is very heartening to see is, there in the last 2 or 3 years, COVID was one of the negatives, but the level of entrepreneurship that you're seeing from the smaller companies and all, and like Mr. Narayan mentioned, I see this around myself all the time, that I have so many people with so many ideas, but lack of finance. Now, if we could, what the government is doing and what is things happening, if, bills could be discounted, working capital could be provided to them, there is such a large scope over there because, the kind of talent that we have sitting in our B and C grade towns, we have not even explored that right now. English speaking, and all of them enabled today because of technology. I mean, earlier there was a huge gap between someone sitting over here and someone sitting, let's say, in a remote part in Rajasthan. Their gap is no more anymore. I mean, he has the same mindset as you and me. And just with the right systems, with the right kind of, credit systems in place, I think there's enormous scope over there. And I think the government is doing with, a lot of steps that the Prime Minister has announced. I was reading 12 or 14 of them, trying to kickstart the MSMEs. These things will be there. I mean, GST was an issue, demonetization was an issue. But now I think it's the time we've really come out of these. There's some amount of economic stability. COVID is behind us. All these, we've got these tailwinds behind us. So I think in the next 4-5 years, if the right focus is given and all of us are forced to support MSMEs in a particular way, I think we can really see a big boom over there.
Okay. Gurpreet, what role do you feel we can see MSMEs playing in the manufacturing space? And like Riju mentioned, perhaps even when we're looking at, India from a tier 2, tier 3 perspective, and the burgeoning of newer companies, younger companies feeding into that pipeline.
No, I think thanks. I guess what we are seeing from a structural, I would say tailwinds. There are 3 or 4 areas which, as India, I think we would see strong growth. One is India's consumption story. I think we are, as an economy, transitioning. I mean, now, while our per capita is 2,000, but if you see purchasing power parity, it's about between 5,000, 10,000 is what it is. And that set of countries, or what we've seen in the other countries, is that we have a good amount of what you call mechanization happening, because of there's a demand for infrastructure, consumer durables, all of that. The chain sets in. Then the other thing which at least I'm seeing is that we have this China plus one kind of is actually happening. It's been talked for about 5-6 years, but now after COVID and what we are seeing it happening in China, we are actually seeing movement of various companies across the world coming in India, trying to actually work, set up supply chains. It isn't only helping us; it's the whole of Asia. But I think we are one of the votaries. The third thing, which I would kind of club 3 or 4 things, is what are the prerogative. I mean, what we've set up as a country is infrastructure development, the whole renewable space which is coming up. These are new age industries. So if you were to, today we have solar panels being done, imported from China. And with all this PLI schemes which the government is putting out, I think there are many of them which will actually spawn the MSMEs. So when I'm talking about all these examples, I think what is it that the underlying theme, while it will, some of these aspects will do favor larger companies, but a good bulk of that will come with MSMEs. MSMEs are going to support the larger companies grow. So I think that's what I broadly see as opportunities for them.
Absolutely. Let me get you in on that, Mr. Bhatia, in terms of the kind of capex that's envisaged, the kind of role that MSMEs can play in the growth.
Well, as I mentioned that I think they are the ones who would really be at the ground level. And if we have to see the developments in the rural, or the kind of population we have in the rural areas, I think the MSMEs is the only answer to provide employment there and to set up small and cottage industries there. He mentioned about there are various skill products which are there which have not really seen the market. So I think this would, one, improve their income, and secondly, even the migration to the urban areas, I think that would also be addressed from that point of view if there is a focus is given on the rural areas to develop that. As I said, issues, of course, is the working capital and finance. It has been mentioned. It comes not only from the banks, or it comes from their payments get stuck. The delayed payments is one of the major issues which MSMEs are facing, whether it is from PSUs or whether it is from the big companies or whatever. Although there is a law existing that 45 days you have to pay, but still whether the implementation of that is there, no. Similarly, you mentioned about, you talked about the tax incentives and other thing. I think most of the MSMEs are either partnerships or sole proprietorship. Now, they do not get the kind of tax incentives because they are a partnership firm or a sole proprietor, which is given to the companies or a corporates or whatever it is, where 25% tax is there or 15% is there. It is not given to them. I think that's something which would really encourage them to see, because they don't want to go to set up a company and to run it and to go into all those formalities and all. Finally, I would say that for them to grow, the way ahead for them, I would just say that I would like to touch that. I mean, they have to get used to the digitalization, which is the next level. They have to go up to the next level. They have to have given the kind of training, vocational training, skill development, all that. I think these programs have to be done at the ground level. And this can be done very well by the educational institutions or the government or both of them together. I think this would really help them to really come up.
Okay. Are you seeing that, Mr. Narayan? And, you have a good perspective of the ecosystem, are we seeing enough of that skilling, training from the ground up, digitization? Is there still resistance or delayed adoption?
See, I mean, the movement is definitely, it's on an uptrend. It's all moving northward kind of stuff. Would we want to see some more speed, some more implementations, etc.? Yes, I mean, the more is always welcome. Now, there is this gap between what you intend and what you actually implement. So let me just pick up one of the points that Mr. Bhatia said, that you're not supposed to delay a fellow's MSME's payment beyond 45 days. Now, the whole implementation is that on the 30th of September and the 31st of March, you take a letter from your MSME saying that I don't owe you anything. But, if you actually, during the audit, actually list out all the transactions that delayed more than 45 days and list it at the pass of the audit, then nobody will dare delay an MSME's payments, right? So the whole idea is about implementing it to the T and, sharpening the teeth and, making sure the MSMEs actually get a lot of benefit from it. The intentions are good, but the implementation is still lacks teeth, if I may say so.
Do you think as a cohort, Riju, going forward, MSMEs can hold considerable clout in terms of the, the way they grow, the industry size that they constitute, and the influence they're able to have on some of these subjects?
So most definitely, I think, we need to just see it industry by industry. Like if you talk about large industries like steel, cement and all, of course, MSMEs can only play a very limited part in that. But like sir mentioned about like China plus one, I belong from the textile industry. Yeah. Believe you me, in the last 2 years, the kind of things you are seeing, actually China's textile industry, let's say, is 10 times of India. And even if 10% of that has to shift to India, you are talking about doubling of the Indian textile industry. Now the large-scale industry cannot do it on its own. Yeah. Large-scale industry will prosper, they will keep putting up plants. But ultimately, who is the beneficiary? The cotton farmer, the cotton ginner, the small sales sector in the garment industry, because this is again a very labor-intensive industry. So you are seeing a lot of investments actually happening on the smaller sector in the MSME side. In our industry, we are seeing, I mean, before this, the Power Minister was talking about the renewable energy space, energy storage. We've invested in an energy storage company right now. Again, it's a registered Government of India MSME, getting all the benefits, etc. And over there, I mean, we don't bring in the capital as the value. The value is the skill set that the set of people get over there. Now over there, whether you are an MSME or belonging to a large corporate really doesn't matter. The right platform with the right opportunity, which we are seeing now in certain industries. So I think if the government can also, focus on a few industries and kind of package the incentives, etc., thereon specifically for the MSME, I think you can really see a good boom in that.
Is there a way to do that, Gurpreet? Is there a way to cater, to specific industry needs?
No, I think we are doing it. If you look at, I think it's probably the next step in the area. So if you saw what the government did with the PLI initiative 3 years back when they started, I think we have 15, 16 of them, many of them with 30 odd people participating in it, investing in it. I think if you do something similar on SMEs and put that up as incentives, I'm sure that they will come in. But I personally believe, I think a better way on a large scale, when you have some people with so many numerous MSMEs around, I think a better way to do probably would be a guarantee fund, where you could, we did this ECLGS, now we could have an SME guarantee fund with a large enough base and with a little bit of an altruistic motive. We can decide which industries, and in that you could actually pinpoint and decide which industries you want to really focus on. For us, traditionally in the MSME space, which gives us the export competitiveness, was the labor-intensive industry. I think that some of that could also be nurtured, but yeah.
Okay. So, you touched upon sustainability, renewable energy, going green, and a lot of these important themes which we've seen filter through all the conversations today. I just want to get a perspective from each of you in terms of whether it's, in your industry or in the ecosystem around you, how you're seeing this at play, what you feel could be done, and how important this is going to be as a factor going forward. Mr. Bhatia.
No, you see, each and every industry, you said rightly, has its own problems. But let me talk about, I belong to packaging industry, metal packaging. So, our raw material prices are linked with steel prices. So the steel went, the prices went, almost 100% increase in the steel prices. So all of a sudden, my turnover goes up. I have to increase the price. But from where do I get the working capital to fund the raw material? Because, these are the kind of issues, and this happened in, let's say, 6, 7, 8 months. The kind of increase which has. So these are the kind of issues which we do face on the ground on day to day. Banks are not there to support to that extent. I think there was an RBI instruction that you give 20% extra. So to that extent, it helped. But then if the prices go up by 100%, so how do you really address that? So, the customer is still paying you in that 45 days or 60 days or whatever that the credit period is. So the working capital requirement is extremely high, and there's no way for the MSME to really look from where he arranges the funds. So these are the kind of issues I can just think of, which is there. But I would also like to say that during COVID, it is the packaging industry which really stood by, because we were allowed to work from the day one. Because the packaging which goes into food packaging, I think that's food or in pharma. I think that's something which was really required during COVID period when everyone was sitting home. So you were looking at packed food or canned food or whatever it is. So we know that how we worked during that difficult time, how we got the workers, employees to the workplace, and then ensuring them they go back safely back home and keep the hygienic conditions and following all that COVID protocols. I think we have gone through that, but I think the industry has benefit from that point of view.
You wanted to add something?
No, I think you were also talking a little bit about the environment and all of that. See, to my mind, I think that is one of the big challenges in front of us, how to manage growth and keep the environment that equilibrium. Because if you've actually seen in the last 40, 50 years, any economy which has grown, whether it is the US or the China, they've had a free hand. Their MSMEs or their big industries and all have really not had to go through the tough times that we guys have to in the last 10, 15 years. Because this whole, the environment, etc., all these have become buzzwords only in the last 10 to 15 years. So now, obviously, as a country, as a responsible country, big corporates obviously are doing their part. But for an MSME, it becomes all the more difficult to, kind of comply with all the environment, health, safety, all of that. So I think over there, the government really needs to come out with a lot of support for them, because they are really in an uneven kind of fighting battle when it comes to this. Because, the other countries have just progressed in the last 30 years without having anything to do with the environment, health and all, and now we have to do. So I think, to my mind, that is one challenge I think if the government could probably address specifically for the MSMEs.
So access to capital, a lot of growth opportunities, of course, adoption, but also some support from the government would be key. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. A big round of applause, please.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.